Right now, Keith Smith, Yahoo Sports, Real GM, at Keith Smith NBA, talking a little NBA Finals with us and more on the NBA as he joins us here via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Keith, welcome back, man. 1-1, ready to go for Game 3 tonight. What's happening?
Hey, yeah, just excited. I was just telling Josh off the air. It's such a long wait between these games, but we're finally here and ready to go for Game 3 tonight.
Here we are. Yes, indeed. After 2 in Toronto, you have the extra day to go to Oakland. And I guess, I don't know about you. I thought the Raptors had a path to win this series, and I thought everything they did in Game 1 was almost the blueprint to do it for them to kind of win the series. And then it got away from them in Game 2. What do you think got away from them in Game 2 that had them lose that very, I thought, heartbreaking home game for them? For them to win the series, I thought they had to take both at home.
Yeah, I think the offense hit some droughts, and when you do that against the Warriors, you better have your defense completely on point. And you've heard me say it multiple times, no team can flip a deficit into a lead like the Warriors can, and that's exactly what they did in Game 2. And then really they just kind of held on down the stretch as best they could. So it was really tough, for the Raptors, but they got one. They needed to at least get one to feel good, and now it's going to be about do the Warriors have enough how do I put it? Enough healthy, good quality players to put on the floor for the rest of the series, because it's going to be tricky for them if they're without Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson and Kevon Looney. That it just all adds up after a while, and that's something that becomes really hard to overcome.
Yeah, and we got a lot to dive into. Let's start with some of the injury stuff here. Is it a disappointment for Toronto if they can't figure out a way to get a win with the way the Warriors are banged up? Do you look at it as, hey, I expect Toronto. I mean, you're in the finals now. These are the two best teams, theoretically. Would you expect them to win with the way Golden State's banged up?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it is. There's no shame in losing to the Warriors in general, just because that's how good they are. But I do think under the circumstances, if Klay Thompson doesn't play and Kevin Durant doesn't play, and then they lose, that becomes really tough, because at that point you got to start to kind of look at things and say, geez, you couldn't get it done when you were going against Steph, Draymond, and a bunch of guys at this point. And that the Warriors guys are a little bit more than that, but they're not those superstars that you were expecting to have to play. So I think there would be some level of disappointment for sure.
When you look at Klay Thompson and his role, if he plays, it seems like he's going to be limited here. Do you think that actually hurts Golden State to have him out there? Would you rather, if you are Golden State, do you just kind of sit him out thinking that you can get through this game without him and get him back to an optimum level? Or if he's healthy and giving you anything, is that the way to go?
Yeah, I think you sit him out. If he can't be out there and be helpful, then there's no point in having him out there, because the Raptors have too many guys that they'll find people and will take advantage of them if there's anybody who can't defend their position, especially. So if Klay's limited, at that point, what are you going to ask him to do? Jog up and down the court and be a jump shooter? Well, that's fine, but that's not enough, and the Raptors will take advantage of that. So if that's all he's able to do, they're best to let him sit out a game, and even if they lose, they're fine. Right. They're the Warriors. They can get right back in this thing.
Well, with the way that they were almost boxing and wanting Steph Curry the other night, it seems that Klay could find a spot at least, right, and just kind of bunker down and get some wide open looks. If they're going to play the same defense, would you recommend playing? Did you like the way they went after Steph like that?
Yeah, that's funny. I know Steph kind of called it a janky defense or whatever he said. It's definitely not something they do in the NBA very often, but I think that worked to their advantage, because I think by the time the Warriors figured out exactly what they were seeing, they were 3, 4, 5 possessions in, and then finally realized that, and then at that point, the problem for Toronto was there just wasn't enough time left to make up the entire deficit, and they missed a couple shots, missed a couple opportunities at steals and things like that. So I think it is going to be, something they might do. I don't think you can do that for an entire game, because now the Warriors have seen it, and what you run the risk of there is, if you are trying that, and with the way Golden State passes the ball, even with some of their main guys out, you're running the risk of giving up a ton of open layups, never mind open jump shots, and that is something you probably can't do. But I would expect to see it maybe broken out from time to time, maybe off inbound plays and things like that.
Hey, how important, you can make a case, Keith Smith, see if you agree, that the signing of DeMarcus Cousins, when they got him, it was they're going to win the championship. Now you got DeMarcus Cousins. He got hurt. He was kind of out of sight, out of mind for most of the year. Then he comes back. Then he gets hurt in the playoffs in the first round, and then he's really out of sight, out of mind. But the way he played in Game 2, you could make a case if they don't make that signing, they probably don't win that game. How important is he now in this series? How important does DeMarcus Cousins become for the rest of this series?
Yeah, massively, especially if Durant and Thompson are going to be out. What you need him to do is really be your second scorer along with Curry, and that's going to be the role they're going to ask him to play. He did that quite well. He was also making a bunch of really, really nice passes in that game. He was really distributing from the high post area quite a bit and getting guys layups and open jump shots off that. So that's, going to be really important. They're going to have to ask a lot of him, which is tough because, it's, as well as he played the other night, it's still important to remember this is a guy who wasn't all the way back from his initial injury from the Achilles tear before he got hurt again. So that's going to be really curious to see, can he bring it for another, 3 to 5 games here the rest of the season to really, help lift the Warriors to a title or not. But he's really, really important. They're going to need him if they're going to get this win.
And Keith, how important was he on the defensive end? Because one of the things I talked about, I did the show right before Game 1 and said, you know what, I'm beginning to see a path where I can see the Raptors get a win. And one of the reasons was, who's going to defend Gasol when he pops out? The Sixers had all sorts of problems with him. The Milwaukee, had some problems with him when he was popping out and hitting shots. And Golden State, who did they have? Because Cousins, people were picking on him all year when he was on the floor defensively. I thought him playing defense in that game was a huge difference maker for them because Gasol scored 20 in Game 1 and had really no looks in game. And he had wide open looks in Game 1. That was a big difference maker.
Yeah, it absolutely was. I think what will be interesting is that's going to be the point is, do they put him in more pick and rolls? Do they try to get him isolated in switches where they can attack him off the bounce and those kind of things? Because the Raptors kind of made it a little easy on him. They let him really just defend Gasol straight up and then some minutes for defending Ibaka straight up. And that's something Cousins can still do. It's when you're asking him to move and defend on the move or defend against quicker, smaller players, that's when he's going to have a lot of trouble. So I would expect to see the Raptors maybe go at him slightly differently than the way they did in Game 2.
Keith Smith with us from Yahoo Sports, Real GM, Keith Smith NBA on Twitter, talking a little NBA Finals here. Draymond Green, man, I got to ask you about his role in all this. Game 1, he was not very good. Game 2, he picked it up to another level. And when you get that Draymond, that makes them at one of the toughest levels. But how important is he how underrated is he in all of this and how it goes? Because Steph, the MVP, I think people think Clay is one of those guys. KD, obviously. People talk about Iguodala possibly being a Hall of Famer. Does Draymond Green get enough credit for what he does?
No, I don't think he does. I think the things he's able to do are kind of easily overlooked. People don't, champion guys who are great defenders unless they're making highlight blocks or they're doing what Kawhi does where it's just, taking the ball out of your hands like we're playing with your, son or daughter out in the driveway. And then Draymond's playmaking ability, his passing ability is really good, but the numbers aren't always there. It's not like he's, averaging 10 assists per game. And his rebounding is always good, but again, it's not Dennis Rodman pulling down 20 a night. So I think what ends up happening with Draymond is he does a lot of things really, really well. Some things great, but what ends up happening is there's no one thing that stands out in his game other than his defense, but that's more of a overall picture of his game. So people end up overlooking his contributions. And, Steve Kerr would be the first one to say this. He is the first one to say this. They are not the team they have been over the last 5 seasons if Draymond Green isn't there doing the things he does. He's what makes them special as much as anybody else on that roster.
Yeah, I mean, where do you stand on the Iguodala stuff? Because it's interesting. You talk about it here in Philly. There's a lot of mixed reviews, interesting reviews on Iguodala and his legacy. Here I feel like he was it was a misunderstood relationship with Iguodala here, if that makes sense. He's perfect in the role as the 4th guy on a Warriors team that is historically great. But here he was asked to be the best player, and he just could not handle that role. So I don't feel that the Sixers fans kind of didn't appreciate him. I just think he was miscasted.
Yeah, we see that happen a lot with guys. They are asked to do more than what they really should do or more than what they're capable of. And the challenge in those situations is understanding that. That happens a lot with guys will go somewhere like Iguodala where it's, they were in a role and then they go somewhere else and it's like, wow, the numbers aren't good, but they just feel like they're a better player. And that's all about fit. The NBA, outside of maybe 10, 11 guys in the league, it's really about fit beyond those guys. Those 10, 11 guys, you're fine. No matter where they go, everything's going to revolve around them. Everybody else, it's about finding the right role and the right fit. And that's what he found in Golden State. As far as his legacy goes, I do think that there is a pretty good chance that this guy's a Hall of Famer. I know that might seem a little crazy to people, but
now if you have a Hall of Fame vote, Keith Smith, would you be voting for Iguodala?
I would be. The reason why is when you look at it is what I was going to is he has had almost two careers. One where he was the primary guy on a team that was good. They were never great, but they were a good team for a long time. Then he went and had a good stint with the Nuggets as well. Then went to the Warriors and became one of, if not the top six men in the entire NBA. He could probably have won that award several times, but the Warriors didn't push him because they were always playing for something bigger. And then he won a Finals MVP. He's been a huge part of their, key lineups all the way through this entire run. He's been there on the floor at all the big moments for them. So I do think it's one of those where it's almost you don't want to ignore the numbers, but the numbers are pretty close to good enough anyway. It's going to have been a good, long career, but what you really need to look at here is the narrative and how did it all put together. And I think, his career is a Hall of Fame career.
Very interesting. I know we talked a lot about it the other day. We actually had a question up regarding whose career would you rather have, Charles Barkley or Andre Iguodala, two former Philly players who were thought of, one of the 50 greatest players, MVP of the league, never won a championship. Andre Iguodala, thought to be a role player, but has a couple of championships and a Finals MVP. And a lot of people, I was pretty surprised in the Philly area. People picked Iguodala's career over Barkley.
Yeah, those things are always interesting. I think that gives you a good sense of who values the quote unquote rings culture that we live in.
Which is where we live, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I use that as an example when people, ask about Kevin Durant and if he leaves, does this ruin his legacy and all these things? And I look at it as if we're going to yell and scream about this guy never won a ring. We can't then be angry when they go do what it takes to go win a ring. Just because he didn't win the ring the way we wanted him to do it, that doesn't matter. All we're going to look at the end of the day is, he's got a couple championships, and then all the rest of it goes on to it. And when you look at a guy like Barkley, you only need to watch TNT every Thursday night to hear Shaq and Kenny, pick on him repeatedly over and over that he never won one. And that bothers those guys, those veteran guys, Barkley, Patrick Ewing, Stockton, Malone, those guys are always, it's part of the conversation no matter what happens with those guys that, they were really, really good, but they never got a championship. And that's really tough. So I don't blame anybody when they go get one. And I don't blame anybody for putting it into their factor of, where you want to rate guys. Just then don't be mad when guys do everything they can to win one.
Well, we will dive a little bit into where these guys might be in just a bit with Keith Smith from Yahoo Sports, talking a little NBA. Keith Smith NBA on Twitter. Let's go to the Raptors side. You're watching. How limited do you think Kawhi Leonard looks to you? I know he's playing well, but does he look like Kawhi Leonard that we saw in that Sixers series?
No, he doesn't. Something is wrong with that leg. My guess is it's a combination of the quad is bothering him, and then there was some reporting that his knee has been bothering, which they think is because he's overcompensating for the quad bothering him in the other leg. And I think it's just tough. There's no – while there are days off in between the finals, right, and we all, moan and gripe about them, it's still a little bit different. The games are played at such a higher level that it's almost like you're playing two games is what a lot of guys will tell you for what it takes out of you. So you need that extra day or two in between games to recover. So what I think becomes really hard for these players is how are you going to be in a position to be your best when you get here? The Raptors did everything right. They managed him the whole way, and yet here we are worried about injuries, being able to do enough for him down the stretch.
Keith, when you look at Kawhi, he leads the way. But for them to win the series, who has to be the consistent number two guy?
Yeah, it's going to be Kyle Lowry. He's the guy who has to step up and give them a lot on both ends of the floor, and he's doing that. But he has to be that guy, game in and game out to be there. Because Pascal Siakam, for as much as we all love his potential, he's still a very young player, and he's going to come and go. Marc Gasol, he can't bring it every game the way he used to. And Danny Green, he's so jump shot dependent that it really doesn't. You don't know if he's going to be there or not. But Lowry can be there. I think the good thing is what he's done in this playoff run versus previous. He's not so shot dependent. In previous runs, when he's missed his shots and his defense has fallen off, his playmaking has gone missing, and he's really become a net negative to have on the floor. Now, as you look at Lowry, if his shot's not falling, he's making all kinds of plays as a playmaker and as a defender, that's what's really helped the Raptors throughout the course of this run.
Keith Smith with us here, and of course the NBA tonight, 8 o'clock. The coverage begins on 97.3 ESPN. All right, so when you watch right now, I'm watching, and I saw that game too, and the Raptors go on that the Warriors go on that 18-0 run, and we might look back at this series and say that was the defining moment of this series, that 18-0 run. Is it more that the Raptors, they called 2 timeouts, right? They tried to stop it. They just couldn't get it to stop. But at that time there, do you look back and say that 18-0 run changed this series? Did you think that the Raptors could win the series maybe up to that point?
Yeah, and I still think that they can win the series. But to that point, yeah, 100%. You had to be feeling pretty good about the Raptors' chances. If they went up 2-0 with the Warriors facing some of these injuries, at that point we didn't know about Clay, but we knew Durant was maybe not coming back, maybe not going to be ready for a little bit. So what you end up seeing there is, I think, as you look at it, you had to feel really good that they were going to be in a spot to hit Oakland up 2-0, which was going to be really important. But the Warriors, like I said, and I said it earlier today, and I'll continue to say it, they flip these games quicker than any team I can ever remember. I like to say they can be down 10. You can get up to, run to the refrigerator, come back, and the next thing you know, they're up 2. And it's just that quick. They come with these runs and these avalanches of scoring like we've never seen. And there's not a lot you can do to stop it on the other side. You call your timeouts, you try and do different things. But if they got it rolling, they've got it rolling.
Yeah, I don't know that I could remember or think of a team that goes down double digits and comes back at you so quickly, and then not only comes back at you, surpasses you in a way that you're demoralized.
Yeah, there's almost times when I think they relish being down because they know what they're about to do to you. And they know once they get it rolling, they take the lead, you hit exactly right, that you're demoralized. And you're not, all of a sudden you're starting to question, and, geez, who are we as a team? Do we feel good? What are we doing here? And the next thing you know, then time runs out and the game's over, like what happened in Game 2.
All right, Keith, let me get your take on a quick off-season things. NBA Finals tonight, Game 3, 8 o'clock. We have it on 97.3. How are you feeling after the Anthony Davis stuff? I mean, now that the fact that they're taking calls, does that kind of signal that David Griffin has the writing on the walls enough for him to start opening up the phones?
Yeah, absolutely. I think David Griffin's a really smart guy, and I think he made his best pitch, and now he realizes, all right, this guy doesn't want to be here. We're going to move on. We're going to get the best deal for us. We're going to get this thing done because there's really no sense in bringing this guy around with us for the next, for however many months that this is going to take.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the big shifts right now. Not that we thought that he was all of a sudden going to say, hey, I want to stay here, but that the Pelicans have almost now kind of conceded that they're not going to be able to possibly bring him back. What about Jimmy Butler? There's some talks that people around the league think the Sixers are going to go 5-1-90. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so this is where one of the more interesting ones that I'm really curious in watching is there's part of me that says I think they're going to have to, because if they don't, what you worry about with Jimmy Butler is if you don't give him a max offer, does he get all in his feelings and get angry and then say, you know what, then I'll go somewhere else for less. So I think you almost have to make sure you come with whatever your best offer is. It's kind of like when you're buying a house and they say best last, well, you better come with first best offer for Jimmy Butler and say, here's what it is, here's what we're willing to do. And I think it's the right move for Philadelphia. That's going to be a bad contract if you do that by the end. That's just the reality of it. But you're paying a little bit for past performance there as well. And I think, the way he fit in and the way he helped carry the team in the playoffs, you really need to extend to to what you can.
Well, you just brought that up, and the thing that I think of is what's going on with Houston right now with Chris Paul, in that they don't know what to do with him. That he's going to be 36 years old, making $44 million. Now, Jimmy Butler will be 34, 35 years old when he's in that $44 million season. But, yeah, you give these guys that fifth year, and they're already 29, 30 years old, you're going to get the back end of their careers making a heck of a lot of money. So I think the Sixers are in a very interesting spot here. But the 5 years, 190. Do you see a situation that if he gets that offer, if the Sixers, because there is some talk that they might do 4 and not try to guarantee that fifth year, but if he gets 4 from the Sixers and 4 from somewhere else, is it a guarantee he goes back to the Sixers, or is that an insulting offer?
No, I think he would go back. It's important to remember with Jimmy Butler, and this is all relatively speaking, but he's never gotten paid like a lot of the other, quote unquote stars in the league. He signed his last contract under the old cap environment. So, he's at this year $20.5 million or so. That's not, maybe I'll take it for sure, but that's not the kind of money that
we'll split it, man.
Anybody else is. Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll split it happily. We'll even cut Josh in for a little bit there too. But it's as I look at it, it is when you look at it in the landscape of things, he's not a $25-30 million guy yet. So I think a full 5-year deal, worth close to $35-40 million annual value. Yeah, he's going to take that because that's just money he can't make back up at any point in his career at where he's at this stage.
A lot of Celtic stuff today. Al Horford, Danny Ainge said that retaining him is a priority. He said he's been having conversations with Kyrie. He said the coach is safe. Do you think there's going to be big changes in Boston, or was that kind of like, man, the way this thing went, they're going to have to blow this thing up, and then they end up running it back and saying, look, let's try with this group again?
Yeah, I watched that whole thing. I think that was Danny Ainge basically saying, be prepared for anything this summer. I don't think they're going to run it back entirely because I think if they can get Kyrie Irving to agree to return, that's going to come with some guarantee of we're going to move some young players off to get in a veteran here. The ideal situation would obviously be Anthony Davis there. That's part of your conversation with Kyrie. If beyond that, then, obviously you're doing some level of resetting. I'd hate to call it rebuilding because the team did quite well without Kyrie a year prior. But it would be, at that point, it really becomes priority. We want to keep Al Horford, and we're going to build this thing towards what we had going a year prior with the kids, Al Horford, and hopefully a much healthier Gordon Hayward, figure out something at the point guard position and go from there. So I think Danny Ainge is trying to level set for people of, hey, this could go a number of ways, and you better be prepared for it because we really don't know at this point either.
Yeah, we can talk for hours on what's about to happen here, but we got next week to do it. We got NBA Game 3 tonight, NBA Finals Game 3 tonight. Keith Smith, make sure you NBA fans out there, give him a follow at Keith Smith NBA, and we do it each week, and the draft is coming up soon, I know that, and then free agency, a huge NBA offseason ahead, but Game 3 tonight. First, we got to get a champion in the 2019 season, and he was kind enough to join us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. All right, Keith, we'll talk again next week, pal. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Keith Smith, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And you know what?